Imagine a single social media rumor starting in Tokyo,
Okay, yeah.
and within an hour, it instantly causes power grids in Texas to just, reroute their distribution, which then simultaneously spikes maritime insurance premiums in London.
Right. And then triggers an automatic adjustment in the price of the groceries you're buying in Ohio.
Exactly. And you can't trace how it happened. I mean, you literally can't draw a line connecting those dots, but your daily life just got slightly more expensive and the system shifted without anyone ever hitting a single button.
Yeah, it's not a glitch in the matrix. This is the new baseline reality we're all trying to navigate.
And trying to navigate that reality using our old tools, like the tools that rely on clear cause and effect. It's sort of like trying to use a map of the 19th century railroad system to understand internet traffic.
It just doesn't map onto the territory anymore at all.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a stack of really fascinating, highly analytical research today that attempts to map this changing layer of human civilization.
It's a huge structural shift.
Yeah, totally. We're looking at a world that is quietly moving away from something called explainability and shifting rapidly toward, well, operational continuity.
Right.
And our mission today is to answer a surprisingly complex question, which is, why is so much global capital really concentrating into AI? And, spoiler alert for you listening, it is not just about workplace efficiency.
No, definitely not.
It's not about slapping a better customer service chatbot onto a website, and it's definitely not just stock market hype.
Okay, let's unpack this, because framing this massive capital inflow into AI as just a tech boom, I mean, it completely misses the tectonic shift happening underneath.
It really does, because to understand the technology, we have to understand the specific environment that's demanding it. We're looking at a global system that has fundamentally lost its linearity.
Right, because we expect clear math from our markets and our societies. Historically, the whole goal of the global system was to perfectly forecast the future. Exactly. If you could predict what would happen with the price of oil or a political election or a specific shipping route, you won.
You won the game. The player with the best predictive model, running on the most reliable historical data, they always had the advantage.
But that entire paradigm relied on this principle of isolation. Like, you could isolate a variable, say, a localized drought in Argentina, and calculate its impact on global wheat prices.
Right, without worrying that a sudden change in public sentiment on a video app would just render all your agricultural data completely useless.
Precisely. Markets valued information volume, analysis speed, and prediction accuracy, mostly because the underlying mechanics of the world were assumed to be explainable. You could figure out the why.
But the data in this stack of research paints a completely different picture of today's environment. Geopolitics, energy grids, supply chains, financial markets, climate events, public opinion. They are no longer separate categories.
They're overlapping.
Overlapping, and more importantly, they're interfering with each other asynchronously. The diagnosis here is profound, I think. The primary problem we face today isn't a lack of information.
No, it's overconnection.
Overconnection.
Yeah.
Which is such a great word for it.
It really is, because overconnection completely breaks the diagnostic X-ray machine of society. A single event ripples across military, financial, and, narrative domains simultaneously.
Yeah.
So it becomes mathematically impossible to map out the exact scale or even the sequential order of an event's impact.
The analogy from the sources that really helps crystallize this for me is a massive tangled soundboard in a recording studio. But the wiring is totally corrupted.
Right. Yeah, the soundboard analogy is perfect.
You slide one volume fader up and it randomly changes 10 other dials on the completely opposite side of the board. You turn up the bass and suddenly the lights in the room flicker, the microphone cuts out, and the studio door locks.
Which makes no logical sense.
None. And in the past, a human engineer would just stop the music, open up the back of the soundboard, trace the broken wires, and figure out why this was happening. They needed to explain the error to fix it.
But when every single system in the world is wired into that one soundboard, stopping the music is no longer an option. You can't just pause the global economy.
Right.
And the research introduces this brilliant framework for understanding why that soundboard is malfunctioning in the first place. They break it down into two concepts: speed and shear.
Okay, let's unpack the speed side of that equation first. The analysis divides the modern world into different layers operating at completely different velocities, right? First, you have the narrative layer.
Yes. The public discourse, the news cycles, social media algorithms, basically what people are talking about and feeling.
And that layer moves at absolute light speed. I mean, a narrative can go global and shape market sentiment in 3 hours.
Oh, easily. But underneath that, you have the OS layer, the operational system. This is the heavy physical reality of how military assets, heavy manufacturing, financial markets, and global supply chains actually move.
And repositioning a physical energy grid or a military supply chain, that takes months, sometimes years.
Exactly. So the shear, and that's an engineering term for the strain produced when two connecting parts move in opposite directions or at different speeds. The shear occurs when these layers grind against each other.
So when the lightspeed narrative layer demands an immediate real-world reaction from a slow-moving, heavy OS layer, it creates immense civilizational friction.
Right. Reality is simply moving faster than our ability to construct a coherent explanation for it.
Which means the old tools, the ones built to carefully predict the future based on past data, they're suddenly obsolete. If the soundboard is permanently malfunctioning, the tools we use to navigate this mess have to fundamentally change.
And this brings us to the actual mechanical purpose of AI in the modern market.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to completely discard the idea of AI as an oracle.
Yeah, that assumption has been everywhere, that we are building these supercomputers to finally give us the perfect prediction of the future. But that's not it.
No. The actual utility of these systems is their capacity to operate, even when the future becomes completely unexplainable.
Yes. Let's look at a concrete scenario to show how this actually works. Imagine a major global shipping canal gets blocked.
Okay.
In the old explainability model, a team of human analysts scrambles to figure out why it's blocked, how long it'll take to clear, what the historical precedent is. They want to write a report and decide whether to reroute ships.
Right. They basically freeze operations to seek an explanation.
Exactly. Meanwhile, a high-frequency AI logistics agent doesn't care why the canal is blocked.
Doesn't need the narrative.
Not at all. The second the delay registers, it dynamically recalculates real-time weather data, alternative port traffic, fuel costs, currency fluctuations, and instantly reroutes 4,000 shipping containers to maintain the flow of goods.
Wow. So it just solves the math of keeping things moving without ever needing to explain the underlying event.
It is prioritizing operational continuity over diagnostic clarity.
And if we connect this to the macroeconomic picture, this entirely explains the current flow of global capital. I mean, money is pouring into AI models, GPUs, massive data centers, and the power grids required to run them.
Because the market is treating all of this infrastructure as a giant, high-speed operating system for processing uncertainty, capital is no longer investing in stability.
Right.
It is investing in fluctuation tolerance.
Fluctuation tolerance. That phrase captures the transition so perfectly. Wait, does this mean investors are treating AI almost like a global VIX? Like the volatility index that measures fear and uncertainty in the stock market?
Yes, but with a crucial difference. Instead of just measuring the volatility, AI acts as an active shock absorber for it. And this introduces a massive structural concept from the sources known as the uncertainty premium.
Okay, an uncertainty premium, meaning corporations aren't just buying AI for the direct, measurable profit a specific piece of software might generate on, like a quarterly balance sheet.
Right. It's not about saving $20 on a customer service rep. They're paying for the strategic advantage of having a system that can continuously run dynamic risk recalculations.
Because when the soundboard malfunctions and the lights flicker, the human response is to freeze, gather a committee, and search for the broken wire.
Exactly. But the entity that possesses an asynchronous AI architecture, a system that doesn't wait for human comprehension to line up before making a move, that entity can make provisional judgments and keep its supply chains and capital flows running.
That ability to just not freeze when explainability collapses, that is the most valuable asset in the modern economy.
If you are a massive global corporation or a sovereign wealth fund, your ultimate nightmare isn't losing a percentage point on a bad prediction. Your nightmare is paralysis during a crisis.
Right, so the uncertainty premium is basically the price you pay to be the entity that can move first in a fog of chaos.
Exactly. And this changes how we view every tech announcement. When a major company announces a multi-billion-dollar investment in a new data center, they aren't just expanding cloud storage, they are building a fortress of fluctuation tolerance.
They're fortifying their ability to operate through the shear.
Yes.
Okay, but if capital is successfully using AI as a shock absorber for this civilizational shear, That leaves us with a glaring vulnerability. We have to look at the entities that cannot afford that shock absorber.
Hmm.
Or, more accurately, the entities that are biologically incapable of operating that way.
Us.
Yeah, us, the human element.
And the structural analysis of human behavior in this environment is perhaps the most illuminating part of this material. We are biologically and culturally wired for explainability.
We need the why.
We desperately need it. The human brain navigates reality by understanding the why behind things.
I would bring this directly to your immediate experience listening to this right now. Think about the underlying, almost unexplainable cognitive exhaustion that seems to just, well, define modern life right now.
Yeah, that sense of being overwhelmed, that doesn't seem tied to how much sleep you got or how demanding your actual job was today.
Right. And the framework we are looking at treats this exhaustion not as a psychological failing or a lack of personal resilience, but as a hard structural reality.
Because the automated systems, the algorithms, the global events, they are updating the baseline of reality far faster than our brains can construct the narrative of why. So our everyday grounding is literally eroding.
And the analytical term they use for this is grounding cost, which applies direct pressure to what they call the life membrane.
The life membrane, it's a great concept.
Let's ground that concept in a daily reality. The life membrane is the boundary you naturally draw around your world to stay sane. It's how you decide what to care about, what to ignore, who to trust, and what the baseline of normal even is.
And in a stable world, the grounding cost is low. You know the rules of your town, your job, your community.
Right. But consider what it takes to make a basic life decision today. Like, buying a house is the perfect example from the text. 10 years ago, you looked at the neighborhood, the local schools, your salary. Simple.
Right.
Today, to buy a house, your brain is inadvertently trying to calculate macro-level climate patterns. Sudden zoning law shifts, driven by algorithmic outrage on social media, the likelihood of a remote work mandate changing at your job, and global interest rate fluctuations caused by, overseas supply chain conflicts.
Your life membrane is stretched across the entire globe just to make a local, personal decision, figuring out what to believe, where to stop thinking, and what the actual baseline is. It requires a continuous, exhausting cognitive load.
You are constantly having to rebuild your reality from scratch every single morning.
Yes.
And a really chilling detail emerges here from the sources.
Right.
People are actually stopping noticing their own exhaustion.
Oh, yeah. That's the danger of adaptation.
Exactly. Because thinking continuously and living in a state of baseline confusion has just become the permanent state of affairs. The sheer friction on our daily life membrane becomes invisible to us, even as it actively wears down our capacity to make decisions.
And this friction manifests publicly in ways we often completely misinterpret, which brings us to a fascinating concept called the observer firing model.
The OFM. This completely changes how we look at internet culture.
It does. Traditionally, when we look at the intense emotions, the extreme polarization, the sudden waves of anger or deep cognitive dissonance across society, the default reaction is to dismiss it.
Right. We say people are just being irrational or social media is making everyone crazy.
But the observer firing model explicitly rejects that. It treats human emotions not as irrational noise, but as structural sensors.
It basically treats human beings as indicator lights on that malfunctioning soundboard we talked about earlier.
Precisely. Those intense collective emotions are direct, measurable indicators of the immense sheer intention being placed on human boundaries. When a demographic or a community exhibits extreme dissonance or fear, it isn't a random glitch in human psychology.
Right.
It is an alarm bell signaling that the operational system they are forced to live within is moving too fast for human comprehension.
So when you log online and see a community absolutely losing its mind over a seemingly random event, a cultural moment, a brand mistake, a minor political gaffe, instead of judging the reaction, we should be looking at it as a heat map.
Yes, a heat map of friction.
We can point to that outrage and say, that is a physical location where the narrative speed and the operational speed are creating massive friction. The human life membrane in that specific sector is literally tearing.
It shifts the analytical lens entirely. You move from judging the emotional output to observing the structural tension causing it. The outrage is just the exhaust fume of a society losing its grounding.
Wow. Okay, so we step back from the AI servers calculating risk. We step back from the exhausted human life membranes, and we look at the ultimate consequence of this dynamic. The grand synthesis of this research suggests we are not undergoing a typical technological revolution.
No. We're in the middle of a civilizational phase transition.
A phase transition, moving us from a civilization dedicated to reducing uncertainty to a civilization designed to operate through uncertainty.
Exactly. Reducing uncertainty is the hallmark of the 20th century. It's the scientific method applied to society. It's careful planning, regulatory frameworks, and building systems that ensure tomorrow looks exactly like today.
Right. But operating through uncertainty is the 21st century. It's high-speed AI, dynamic risk models, and embracing the chaos because you have the computational power to surf it.
And this phase transition reorganizes the very nature of power on a global scale. Power, capital, and global connection will ruthlessly concentrate around the entities, the mega corporations, the sovereign funds, the specific tech ecosystems that possess the highest degree of uncertainty tolerance.
So we are looking at the birth of entirely new forms of inequality. I mean, we usually talk about wealth gaps, but this maps out a gap in decision speed, a gap in reality grounding.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Some entities will possess the high-speed operating system to process the chaos and act instantly, completely insulated from the shear. Meanwhile, the rest of the population is left standing in the diagnostic muddy waters, still trying to figure out what just happened to their grocery bills.
If you have the high-speed OS, you navigate the storm seamlessly. If you don't, you absorb the shear directly into your life membrane.
But let's run a constraint check on this thesis before we wrap up. Because is this acceleration toward an unexplainable high-speed OS inevitable?
It's a fair question.
Right. The analysis does outline reverse conditions. It acknowledges that this transition isn't a guaranteed, frictionless straight line into the future. Things like power grid limitations or geopolitical fragmentation could act as massive speed bumps.
Oh, the structural limits are very real, and they are mostly physical. These asynchronous AI architectures require staggering, almost incomprehensible amounts of energy. The speed of the OS layer hits a hard physical wall if the global power grids cannot support the expansion of these data centers.
Yeah, you cannot run a fluctuation-tolerant, multi-billion-dollar AI model on an energy grid that keeps browning out during the summer. The math just stops working.
And beyond physical infrastructure, there is the reality of geopolitical fragmentation. AI models rely on the overconnection of global data to calculate risk dynamically.
Right.
If nations begin throwing up hard digital borders, restricting data flow, and siloing their technology sectors, they break the very overconnection that the uncertainty premium relies on.
There's also the potential for immense organized societal resistance, right? If the grounding cost becomes too heavy for the average person to bear, if the life membrane of the general population degrades to a breaking point, you could see a massive structural pushback against the sheer speed of these systems.
Absolutely. Populations could collectively demand a return to slower, explainable institutions, even if those institutions are demonstrably less efficient. The demand for why might just override the market's demand for operational continuity.
We demand to see the broken wires on the soundboard, even if it means the music has to stop.
Exactly. And ultimately, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the researchers aren't peddling a simplistic doom narrative.
Right. This isn't an extreme futurist manifesto predicting human extinction or a sci-fi dystopia.
Not at all. It is a calm, highly observant, structural interpretation of the present moment. The collapse of explainability isn't a threat looming on the horizon. It is the water we are already swimming in. Society, capital, and governments are desperately building this architecture right now simply to keep the lights on in the dark.
They're adapting to the murkiness and capitalizing on uncertainty itself. It completely rewires how you read the morning news, how you view market fluctuations, and how you understand your own daily fatigue. To you, listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a genuinely dense but beautifully illuminating map of our changing world.
Once you begin viewing the world through the mechanics of speed, shear, and operational continuity, the invisible architecture of the modern world becomes suddenly, well, visible.
It really does. We've journeyed from the overconnection of our global systems through the realization that AI is being capitalized as an uncertainty processing OS, right down to the cognitive toll this civilizational shear takes on our human grounding.
Yeah.
But before we sign off, there's one final provocative thought we want to leave you to mull over. We've spent this time dissecting how global markets, megacorporations, and capital are adapting to this new reality. They're surviving by abandoning the need for an explanation. But consider the absolute bedrock of our society. Think about the law. Think about democracy. Think about the justice system. These are human structures entirely, 100% built on the premise that things must be explained.
They require the why.
Exactly. that a clear line of cause must be linked to an effect to determine truth, guilt, or public policy. So, what happens to the courthouse or the voting booth or the legislative chamber when the diagnostic X-ray machine of society is permanently broken?
Wow, yeah.
How does a legal system function in a world where the entities holding all the operational power no longer need or even care to explain why something happened? It's a heavy question, but navigating the sheer requires asking it. Until our next deep dive, stay curious, take care of your life membrane, and we'll catch you next time.